Well, May is Kids Month, and the theme of this whole month, every week, has had something to do with kids. And we started with our graduation, and last week, and we had a Sunday where we talked about our mission in this world, where we can make an impact on the lives of children who are living in poverty, and we can make a difference in that. It was awesome. That week, I don't know if you guys all know this, but every single packet that we had available for sponsoring kids got taken. And it didn't take long. So thank you for all of that. I know we have a lot of folks here. Yeah, praise the Lord. We have a lot of folks in this church that do that. And if you didn't, or you didn't get a chance, didn't get there fast enough or whatever, listen, there are plenty more. You can go to Compassion's website and get all that information. It works exactly the same, but you can make a real difference. I'm so grateful last week for my friend Sam, who it's not always that you invite somebody to preach in your absence and say, I want you to preach on abortion. And they say yes. That's pretty tough, but I knew because of his heart, his life experience, all of those things, that there may be nobody better. So thank you for that. I was able to watch through the miracle of technology, and oh man, thank you. I was blessed by that as well. So today we're going to be talking about the sermon title today is Them Before Us. And I have borrowed / stolen that string of words from an organization called Them Before Us. And I want to bring your attention to them and the work that they are doing in our culture. They're brand new. They're started by they have a fascinating story. Actually, I'm not going to get into that right now, but I hope you'll go check them out. It's thembeforeus.org. It's an amazing organization, and but it's an organization that takes a kind of a broad view of how we as the church need to begin to see and act and live based on the things that are going on in our culture in regards to children, the plight of children. And so that's what I want to talk about today. It's going to be a little bit of a recap. We're going to be talking about some things that we have talked about, and then we're going to talk about a little bit more. So that's what this is. We're going to be talking Them Before Us. I'm going to bring some scriptures out and talk about Jesus's perspective, what Jesus had to say about children and about how we treat them and what we do in this world in light of children. I want to start by saying this: children are among the most structurally vulnerable members of society because they are developmentally dependent, economically powerless, and politically underrepresented. Across many societies, children are disproportionately affected by poverty, neglect, abuse, and instability, while possessing limited ability to advocate for their own needs or secure resources independently. Healthy child development depends heavily on sustained adult care, protection, guidance, and provision, responsibilities that families and societies do not always fulfill adequately. In other words, this is a universal issue everywhere we go. This isn't an America problem. It's not just a Delta problem, and it's not just a Delta Christian Church problem. It's an everywhere, everyone problem. And we as a church do work hard to respond to the needs of children. It is why we put, I don't know if you realize this, I don't know how much time you've spent looking at the church budget. Most people probably just as long as, things aren't falling apart and things seem to be moving along, we're good, maybe don't need to worry about it. But the biggest investment that this church makes, and I will tell you that any church makes, is in its staff. We spend more money on staff than we spend on anything else, and that's because of this reality. that stuff doesn't do ministry. I think we all know this. This building is such a great building, and we do spend money to maintain it. We spent a lot of money to build it. We did not spend, if you compare the money that we spent to build this over the last 25 years that we've been in this building and the money that we have spent on staff, it doesn't compare. We've spent way more money on staff. And in the life of any church, that will be the case. Because people do ministry, stuff doesn't. All right, we have a video projector. It's never done a day of ministry in its life, but we use it as a tool. People use it as a tool to do ministry. You see what I'm saying here? And so that is one of the ways that we address not just the ministry that we do in general, but the ministry to do toward children and youth. We spend a lot of money on this. We have a value as a church. We have a great preschool here at Delta Christian Church, Great Beginnings Preschool, and they do great ministry to children and families. And it is a big part of our our community, our ministry community here at Delta Christian Church. We take this very seriously. But I want you to know that is not the be-all and end-all. That should not be what just causes all to say, okay, we're good. We've got some people who are on this, and we don't need to worry about it anymore. As a matter of fact, that is the very opposite of what we're trying to achieve. What we want to do is to recruit armies of people to address the issues that we face, especially when it comes to the lives of children in our community, in our state, and in our nation, and in our world. It may be, and I do believe this, that it is the church's greatest opportunity for kingdom advancement and cultural change, and the most likely pathway to spiritual revival and cultural relevance in our generation to work together to put an end to the culture of death that is abortion and the fertility industry, making the destruction of preborn human life unthinkable. I think that is probably the greatest opportunity that we as the church, as Christians in this world, have to make the care, protection, guidance, and provision, and spiritual welfare of our next generation of children our top priority of kingdom mission on earth. I think that is the greatest pathway. There's been so much talk in my lifetime about being relevant, the church being relevant. I've gone to conferences over and over, so many conferences, and there's always somebody talking about we got to be relevant. We got to be relevant, and sometimes it's about preaching, the way we preach the word. We got to preach the word, and we got to use these, this kind of clever approach to preaching the scriptures, or we need to have a special minister, or we need to stop talking. There's those too. We just got to stop talking about certain things to be relevant. I'm sorry to say that when I was in college, I had a professor who stood up before our class and said, the church needs to just move on from this issue of abortion. We've lost it. It's over. We just need to move on. And my blood was boiling. Friends, listen, this war didn't start last century. It did not start last century. We have been embroiled in a spiritual war, caught in the middle of it, for as long as there has been mankind. And it will not end with us. We are not the answer to it all. But we are not called to surrender and move on. Shame on us for ever thinking that that was even a possibility. It is for us to fight. We've got to fight this. We've got to fight in our culture for truth. And this is not just this is not about carving out a place in our culture to be Christians so that everybody else will just leave us alone so that we can be and do what we want to do. This is a battle not for social status. This is a battle over life and death in so many different ways. And I want to talk about that a little bit more today. I'm not just here to this morning just to harp on this issue of abortion, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. The issues surrounding the welfare of children, both the unborn and the born, are certainly not just political ones. I want you to hear this. I think I might have said this a while back. I want to say it again. This isn't about politics, so if you're like, oh, great, another sermon on politics. Nope. Listen, if we're not careful, the enemy of that which is good and just gets this idea that church isn't about politics, and so let's make sure that everything is about politics, so they can't talk about anything that matters. And listen, I have very little desire to stand up in front of you and talk about politics. I'm not a politician. I'm not here to help people run for offices or something like that. But I do want to talk about truth. I want to talk about what is right and righteous. And if that interferes with someone else's political agenda, I am totally comfortable with that. We ought to be all about that which is good and right and righteous, and we promote that in this world. That is what the call to be salt and light is it not? And so that is what we will endeavor to do. We live in a culture where everything's become political, and these issues that are highly moral are hotly contested in the political world. That doesn't mean that they are relegated only to the political. Christians should not abandon moral conviction simply because an issue has become politically controversial or even personally difficult. Here's what I mean by that. And I realize that in a room this size, we talk about things every week that are difficult, and that's okay. But when it comes to stuff like this, the statistics tell us that there are plenty of folks in this room who have a lot of experience with this issue of abortion personally. Sherry last week came, and I was so glad when she shared that she had been through that she had had an abortion in her life. It's part of her testimony and part of the just beauty of what God has done in her life. And listen, I am not here to shame anyone. We have all made griefs. We've all fallen short of the glory of God, and we can look back, and those that we the heroes of the New Testament that we trust in their testimony about Jesus. They're the reason what they wrote. They're the reason we've chosen to believe, right? And when we look into their lives, Paul was a murderer of Christians. Peter was a coward. He abandoned Jesus at the most inopportune moment. And yet what we see is love and grace and restoration, and that is what we're about. But here's the thing. The fact that it might be personally difficult doesn't excuse us from taking it very, very seriously. I have I have friends in ministry who at one point in their life, I would hear them preaching about the immorality of same-sex marriage, the immorality of homosexuality, and then later on in life, one of their children came out. And their tune changed. And this becomes the problem. It's sort of like Satan gets us in this vice, and he starts, tightening down the screws on us, and it hurts. It hurts, and it becomes personally difficult to speak the truth. We have a very difficult time figuring out, how do you love someone and speak the truth to that person, the truth that hurts, the truth they don't want to hear. We got to figure that out. We have to figure out how to be truth tellers and grace givers at the same time. It's difficult, but difficult doesn't mean, Jesus calls us to difficult. If any one of you does not take up his cross daily and follow me, he cannot be my disciple. Friends, that is the definition of difficult. We are called to difficult. Difficult is what it means to follow Jesus. We shouldn't be looking for the easiest way forward. We should be looking for the most righteous way forward, and in all of this. And so that's what this is about. There's a passage in Proverbs 24:10 that says, "If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small." Yeah, I don't know how many times I've read that, but I've read that and just kind of gone on by. If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Kind of comes like as a little bit of a, well, duh. Kind of statement. I don't know. You're climbing a mountain and it's getting hard and you pass out. That's what that's kind of how it hit me. And that's not what it says. That's not what it means. If you faint in the day of adversity, you look up that word in the Hebrew, that word that's translated here, faint. It might not be the very best word, at least maybe not the one I would choose. The real meaning of that word is if you cower, if you run and hide. In the day of adversity, when someone comes against you, when another voice comes and pushes back on what you know to be true, it says, your strength is small. The next verse is very related. We're often used to seeing, in Proverbs, just, they're all one-liners, just this, but they're not all one-liners. Some of them are 2, some of them are 4. You gotta kind of pay attention to that. The next line says this: rescue those who are being taken away to death. Hold back those who are stumbling to the slaughter. My friends, I do believe that is our calling in our culture. There are those in our culture who, because of their powerlessness, are being taken away to the slaughter. They are being taken away to death. And there are those, because of their ignorance of truth, who are stumbling to the slaughter. The day of the Lord is coming. Scripture talks about this over and over and over again. And the church argues about how and when and where and all of this stuff. But listen, here's what is very clear. It's coming. It is a reality. And Jesus came to save us. I hear people say this all the time, that Jesus came to save us from our sin. And that is like somehow metaphorically true, but I got to tell you, we're terrible with metaphors. I really don't like them. My value in one of the values that I try to apply in my preaching is the value of clarity. I want to be clear, crystal clear. I'm okay if I say something and you're mad at me about it. That's fine. You can apologize later. What I'm not okay with is preaching a muddy sermon, something that's not clear. And that whole idea that Jesus saved us from sin is not clear. Your sin isn't attacking you. Your sin isn't the real long-term existential issue here. God has promised that he is going to judge all unrighteousness. And our problem, we're going to get into this in this summer in a big way, but our problem is that we have all sinned. Jesus came to save you from the wrath of God. There is only one shelter from the oncoming wrath of God, and it is the person of Jesus Christ. Nothing else will do. And right here, what this is telling us is don't faint in the day of adversity. If you do, you need to bulk up. You need to strengthen up. You need to get a stronger back and arms. And you need to you got to work out spiritually so that is not happening, so that you're not fainting in the day of adversity, because we have a job to do. We need to rescue those who are being taken away to death, and we need to hold back those who are stumbling toward the slaughter. What slaughter? The day of the Lord. There are people, because of their ignorance, are stumbling toward the day of the Lord, and it is not going to be good for them. Do we care? That is the real question. Someone, actually it was John Stuart Mill, who once said, "Bad men need nothing more to compass their ends than that good men should look on and do nothing." We often attribute that quote to Edmund Burke, but that's not, Edmund Burke didn't say that. Actually, what Edmund Burke said was similar, but here's what he said. When bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall one by one, an unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle. Neither of them said the thing that we always say that they said, but it was close. Both of them said something we desperately need to hear. We live in a culture that says personal identity and autonomy are the greatest goods in society. And when you hear it like that, it almost sounds like, well, yeah, that's freedom, right? We're Americans. That's liberty. Personal identity and personal autonomy are the greatest goods in society. And anything that threatens those things are an evil to be eradicated. Essentially, what that says is me first. Me first. And my friends, this idea of me first is not just, you hear that and you say, oh yeah, that's super narcissistic, right? Which is a word that gets used a whole lot. I've heard people say, man, everybody's using this word narcissistic now. And it's like, it's interesting, isn't it? How the words we use in our culture reflect our character in our culture. There's a reason everyone's using the word narcissistic all the time. It's because our culture has become insanely narcissistic. There's a reason for some of these things. But listen, it's not just about, the issue here is not just narcissism. This perspective, this worldview is deadly. And we have been witnessing it for multiple generations. Are we seeing it? Or are we burying our heads in the sand? Last week, of course, Sam talked about abortion, and he mentioned that in the years since 1973, when Roe versus Wade was decided, from then till now in America, there have been about 70 million abortions. It is a staggeringly difficult number to reconcile, even to imagine. Right? You've been in a large stadium and maybe with 20,000 other people, and you might be able to imagine what it would be like to go and with your hand play, sort of play duck, duck, goose, touch every single one of them on the head and count, 20, that's a lot. That's a lot of people. It is nothing. It's not even in the same ballpark, so to speak, of 70 million. It is a veritable Holocaust. And some good things have happened. A couple years ago, there was a Supreme Court decision that ended the reign, so to speak, of Roe versus Wade. But all it did was kick that back to the states, so all the states can decide individually how they will process that. And there was a point in time, most of my life actually, that you could look to the Republican Party to know that pretty much every single time they came out with a platform statement that it was going to include life. It no longer does. It's off the platform. So if that is an important issue for you, there is no party in this country that cares about it, at least in their writings. But what we do care about, and I don't, again, my purpose here is not just to criticize political parties, but I'm going to right now, because the Republican Party has traded this life policy that it has had for so many years, and it was sort of like, even if we lose elections, this is what we believe is true. And we have moved over to saying we're all about fertility. Our president says, I love fertility. Fertility is great. Whatever that means. You might not know this, but in our country, the fertility industry has produced 12 million babies. I believe it was in the late 70s that the first test tube baby, it's what they called it back then, test tube baby was born, and since then 12 million babies have been born live because of technologies like IVF. What you might not know is that over 100 million fertilized fetuses have been discarded in that same amount of time. 100 million, not 70, 100 million. You guys, that does not sound like fertility to me. Any medical treatment that had a 88% mortality rate, I don't think we'd be okay with that. I think we'd say that's not good. That's not worth pursuing. We have this very strange idea, and it all comes down to this idea that what ought to come first is our personal identity and our personal autonomy. I should be able to do whatever I want, no matter what. We talk a lot about, I'm going to say it this way, there is a lot of talk about human trafficking in this world, and there are really wonderful and powerful organizations that are working in this world to fight against all of that. But oftentimes, I think we don't understand. Often we think it is a over there problem. This is something that happens in, in Southeast Asia, right? That's the big problem over there. And we don't realize that statistically, the Super Bowl in America that happens every year is the largest human trafficking event on this planet. Sexual trafficking of children is an enormous problem in our culture. And there's no country that does it better than us. In March, Tim Tebow, you've heard of him, he testified before Congress. And when he did, I don't know if you saw that, I hope you did. If you didn't, YouTube it. You need to watch it. He's going to show you this. This is a map of the United States. And you can see all those, well, it's actually hard to see all those red pips on there, all those red markers. Every single one of those markers on that map represents a unique IP address. Every single computer that connects to the internet in America gets a unique IP address. That alone should scare anybody that would get involved in this madness. But every single one of those pips represents a computer that is receiving and sharing child pornography. We got a big problem. Here's the most heartbreaking part. Can you see the blue ones? Those are the ones that are being investigated. Those are the ones that are being investigated. The blue dots on there. It's hard to see them. The blue dots in a sea of red, Tim said. This is all of these things that we're talking about. This is why this organization that is called Them Before Us exists. And I would love to spend tons of time and talk to you about their origin story. Here's what I hope. I hope that you'll get online, maybe today, and go to Them Before Us. Do a search for it. I think it's thembeforeus.org, and learn about their organization. And it's an amazing Christian organization. It was started by a lady who had written an article about some of this stuff, and someone, I don't remember who it was. You'll find out, but her name was Katie, and someone did a little bit of research, found out where she lived, found out where she worked, found out all this stuff, and doxed her. Have you heard this term before? This idea of doxing. This is when somebody out there takes somebody who's involved in the fight some way and gives all their enemies their personal address, and here's where they go to church, and here's where they do all the here's where their gym is, and all this, and go to those places and make sure you intimidate them, and all of this. It's whatever. Well, that happened to Katie, and at first it terrified her. There's a lot of wackos in our culture today. And there's a lot of madness in our culture today. This is very for real. People are getting hurt. And of course, those were the thoughts that I'm sure Katie had in the beginning. But the Lord spoke to her, and she decided maybe this is one of the best things that could ever happen. And I tell you what, more attention has been brought to her and her organization and her cause because of that than anything. We live in this moment of culture where technology will allow us to hide behind a username and a profile photo that is not us. And we can say things that are absolutely true, but not connected to us in any real way, that builds zero value, and if deleted, doesn't matter. Because we're afraid to stand up and be counted. We're afraid to speak out. I am so glad when I think about the people who have gone before us in history. I'm so grateful for people who were willing to speak out about the unimaginable evil of slavery in America. And they weren't willing to give it up. They were willing year after year, even though people were saying, this is a dead issue. We've already decided on this. We have the great compromise. Move on. They said, we're never moving on. This battle didn't start last year, and it's not going to end next year. This is a forever. This is a human issue. This is a spiritual war, and it's going to go until Jesus ends it. And I would love to see it end in your life before he does. Because I've read the scriptures, and every knee will bow, and every tongue will confess. But it won't be a good day for everybody. I am so grateful for the people who have come before us, the Wilberforces of the world. We need more of that now, like crazy. I'm so grateful for women like Katie who will stand up and start an organization like them before us and to address this and stand against it. And listen, I'm not saying that you or any specific person in this room has to do what Katie's doing, but I am saying, friends, we need to get behind the people who are taking a stand. We need to take a stand with them. We have things in our culture like no-fault divorce. We never really asked, how's that going to work out for kids? We have things, we're having this conversation around gay and lesbian marriage. I don't know if you guys remember this. Do you remember when we were just, as a nation, when we were arguing about this and we were wrestling over this idea? And people were saying, well, if we do gay marriage, if we water down what marriage really means and just make it mean nothing and have it for all this, then we're gonna have to give them children. And they said, no. This is not about children. You remember that? Guess what? It's now about children. And now we have come to the place where we are on purpose depriving children of one or both of their biological parents so that infertile gay or lesbian couples can have children. This is me first. This is what it leads to. When we jettison the biblical idea that man was created in the image of God and receives purpose, meaning, value, and dignity from the Creator, not society, not government. If we jettison all that, then the mutilation of a perfectly functional bodies of children who are dealing with dysphoria makes perfect sense. Then ending the life of a pre- or post-born child even, because of a defect that will lower the quality of life. That's the phrase we use. Oh, the low quality of life. Somehow that makes sense. Here's what we say. Kids will be fine. How many times you heard that? Oh, the kids will be fine. They're resilient. They're resilient. Isn't that something? We say, I hear more people talking about how unresilient kids are these days. They call them snowflakes, young people. They just can't handle anything. Oh, but the unborn ones, are they the resilient? Who are the resilient ones that we're talking about here? This is madness. They adapt. They adapt better than adults. That's how we justify all this madness. Folks, this is a life and death issue. This isn't a preferences issue. This isn't a comfort issue. This is a serious life and death issue that we need to engage with. And I am sorry to say that when I look at the real statistics, the church in America has zipped it. I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see the real research and the real numbers. Like, no one is talking about this? According to the statistics, this might be the first sermon you've ever heard on this. And I find that devastating. And I am so sorry. I want to share with you, I don't have much time, I want to share with you a few words from the mouth of Jesus about children. This is what Jesus has to say about children. This is, he leaves this in no uncertain terms. This does not lack clarity. Crystal clear here. There's no room for confusion. This is from, I'm reading to you from Matthew chapter 18, verses 1 through 6. He says, and Matthew records, at that time, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" I love how we can just always count on the disciples to represent us so perfectly. And calling to him a child, he put him in the midst of them and said, and friends, let's try to take this as seriously as possible, as personally as possible. Truly, I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea. Do you think he was just being extreme? It seems, that's really severe, Jesus. Tone it down a little bit. Jesus, I've heard some people say that, Jesus kind of had the most severe things to say about religious people. And certainly Jesus was very clear and very direct and pretty sharp when he spoke of and about and to the Pharisees, those who controlled Israel in those days. And I get that. But this is maybe the most direct and severe that Jesus was. I'm going to share with you again, Matthew chapter 18, verses 10 through 14. Jesus says pretty much the same, this is the same moment, just a little later on. He says, "See that you do not despise one of these little ones." I think that's really a strange thing to say. You think about that? Who does that? It's like, who doesn't love a cute little baby? Despise? Listen, he's not talking about how you feel. He's not talking about, can you look at a picture of baby and go, oh, it's so cute? That's not what he's talking about. This word despise means to have contempt. We use that word, we hear that word mostly when we're watching television and it's some sort of court drama, right? You sit down or I'm going to hold you in contempt. The judge isn't saying that because of a way a person feels at that moment. That has nothing to do with your emotional state. It has to do with your behavior, the way you act. This is what he's saying. When he uses this word despise, it means this contemptful action. If you act contemptfully to one of these children, this is what he's talking about. See to it that you do not act in contempt of one of these little ones. For I tell you that in heaven, their angels always see the face of my Father. This is like a really illuminating verse, and I wish we had time to go into it. Like, you know where we get the idea of a guardian angel? Right here. This is it. From the mouth of Jesus, he says, they're angels. I want you to like, let's just sit here for a second and just try to absorb the implication of what Jesus is saying. He is saying that there are maybe special angels in heaven who are theirs, who always see the face of God. In other words, they are always in his presence. It doesn't take long for news about these little ones to reach Almighty God. Right? This is like as if there was this chain that has to work out, right? You just get direct email or whatever. But this is what Jesus is saying. He's positioning the plight of children in such a way. He's saying, my Father in heaven has a special department of angels just for children. You watch yourself around them. If you're not a moron, you're going to be very, very careful about how you treat these little ones. This is like this special protection. They always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. What do you think? And then he tells this story that we all, like, if a man had 100 sheep, this is the story we tell about evangelism. Jesus is not, this hit me like a ton of bricks when I was reading this. Jesus isn't talking about evangelism. 100 sheep, one of them goes missing. Does he not go after him? He's talking about children. When a child goes missing, we look. We don't ever say, well, I still have my 3 other children. At least I've got these 3 good ones. Right? We look. And what he's saying is, do you think God is any less watchful and caring? His eye is on these children. He cares about these children. He goes and he finds it, and when he does find it, he rejoices over it more than the 99 that never went away. In other words, he's over the moon. And so would we be like, right? You don't just, if you have children that never, got lost or whatever, you probably don't wake up in the morning and just like do this over the top thing, like, oh my goodness, just grab them and hug them. It's like, oh, I missed you so much last night. I didn't know you. You probably don't do that. You should try it every now and then. Just like freak out. Just do it. But if your child did go missing, God forbid your child went missing, and it was one of those horrible, this is a horrible experience. Any parent who ever would go through this, it will ruin you. It's just like your mind. What are you going to do? You're just beside yourself. How do you even go on, right? And then you're reunited. you're probably going to go over the top a little bit, right? You're going to hug them a little too hard and a little too long, and you don't care, right? You are like, you just imagine how you'd be. Don't imagine too long, because we don't need to like go to that spiral. But this is what God is talking about inside of this. And then he ends that with, so it is not the will of my Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should, what's the word? Perish. Do you know what that word means? Folks, I don't believe for a second that he is talking about them going to hell. I don't see any reason in all of the scriptures to assume that a child who dies goes to hell. That is ridiculous. That's actually, to say that is to call into question the very character of Almighty God. It is not the will of my Father in heaven that any one of these little ones should perish. We need to take that really seriously. We need to understand that God cares deeply about this issue. In Luke 14, verse 15 through 27, Luke writes this for us. He says, now great crowds accompanied him, that's Jesus, and he turned and said to them, if anyone comes after me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. This was one of the most mind-blowing things that Jesus could ever say, and he did say it. And you got to imagine everybody was going, what? Right? And people were like there. People who were listening were there, and they were standing right by their mom. And they were like, do you look at your mom? Like, sorry. You know what? Well, I think we can all read between the lines here and go, okay, Jesus is really trying to make a point, isn't he? Yeah, and it's like there's 100% agreement across the board, theologically. Anybody who talks about this, writes about this, we can pull this apart and say, okay, he was not saying, okay, time out, everybody. He was not saying, hate your wife, hate your mom, hate your dad, hate your kids. What he was saying is, you love God so much. He is so much in first place that when you zoom out and see where everyone else is, it looks like it's the other side of the spectrum. It looks like he comes first by so much that even your life, what you think about your own life appears to be hate. Friends, there is no other worldview system on this planet that comes close to this type of idea. This idea, what he says here, is so revolutionary. Like this me first idea is deadly. It is deadly. And 170 million people, while I've been alive, have died because of this me first worldview. It is deadly. But this worldview is absolutely different. It is so much the opposite. It is so extremely the opposite that this world does not even know how to handle it. Those who have been blinded by the God of this world do not know how to handle this at all. But this is how we are to operate. I'm going to say this. I mean, no disrespect to Katie. You've probably heard this. I love this organization, Them Before Us. I want you to go there. I want you to give them money. I think it's so great what they're doing. All of those blue pips that we saw, those are being investigated by the Tim Tebow Foundation because people are supporting them financially to investigate that for the FBI. And I think you should. But This whole them before us thing, it's assumed. And these guys, this ministry is trying to reach people who don't have a foundation of the scriptures. They're not trying to change the mind of the church. They're trying to change the mind of a culture. And so they're not trying to be, very Jesus-y and all this stuff. You read their articles, and it's not like my sermon today. It's not going to be full of a bunch of Bible verses. It's going to be full of really well done, reasoned arguments why we should do these things, okay? So you're going to look at that and you're going to maybe you're going to think that's kind of weird, but that's what they're doing. And they're doing a very good job of it, and they're moving the needle. But for us, I want to talk about this here. And I mean no disrespect to that, but you cannot have them before us if you don't have him before them. Him before us, before them. Right? That's how it goes. And that's what Jesus is saying here. I'm first. If you don't put me first, this all ends real ugly. But if you put me first, if you put Jesus before all things, including yourself, then amazing, beautiful, wonderful things happen. You begin to see things on earth as they are in heaven. At least a taste of it. And this is what it's all about. What do we do about it? This has been the thing that I have worried the most about, this part of the sermon. So what do we do about it? I have just laden your shoulders with this huge, heavy load. I'm so sorry. You just have all this on. You listen. We have to get our heads out of the sand, and we have to see reality. And it's okay if it's overwhelming to you and me. That's all right, because we don't carry the world. It's not overwhelming to Jesus. It's not more than he can handle. And he invites us to come and partner with him to make a difference in this world. And that is all he's calling you to make a difference in this world. And listening to a sermon doesn't make a difference in the world. I want you to know that. It's got to go further than that. You could all say amen today, and that's great, but it doesn't change anything. In order to do this, we need to do, this is a two-step, this is a two-part process, if you will. We have to do two things. We have to fight evil, and we have to build good. None of which we're doing, by now, we got to be super clear on this, right? None of which we're doing in order to be saved. We don't do good in this world to be saved. We do it because we are. And this world needs somebody to build some good. And Jesus calls us to do this. So we need to fight evil and be good. Build good. Listen, years ago, I had a conversation. I was, it's 11:10. I hate this clock. Years ago, I'm going to try to tell this story really quick. Years ago, I served as a chaplain for the Durango Police Department. And while I was there once a year, every May, in fact, May is when Police Memorial Day is and Police Week, and we would always have a bunch of events during that week. And one of the events always was to honor every law enforcement personnel who had ever given their life in the line of duty, in any, not just with the Durango Police Department, with every agency. And a long time ago, down in La Plata County, there was a Secret Service agent who was doing an investigation of some mines, and some really nasty stuff was going on, and some men shot him in the back. And so every year, that man gets honored in La Plata County for his service to the country and for giving his life. And we'd reach out and try to find all the family members that were alive that knew this person or whatever, have them come on this person's behalf and receive. We gave there would be a wreath and there were pinnings and all this stuff. Well, it had been a long time since that had happened, and we were completely unable to find living relatives, and so we invited someone from the Secret Service to come, and the special agent in charge of Colorado came. And it was great to meet her. And she, I was speaking with her, telling how everything, here's how this service is going to go. Here's all the stuff. Here's what we want you to do. And as we were speaking, she said that she was ready. to retire. And she was younger than me. I was like, you're ready to retire? And she's like, yeah, I've had enough. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I have spent my whole life fighting evil. All I want to do is just go build some good. And I got to tell you, that just about put me on the ground. It blew me away. I was just like, you don't see the good you're building, and sometimes the evil you're fighting makes it so you can't see the good you're building. And these things I'm talking about aren't easy things. None of this is easy. But we need to see our battle in the light of both of these things. If you feel like all you're ever doing is fighting evil, that's rough. That's going to be real hard. We need to have a balance in our life of fighting evil and building good. A lot of times what we do is we just try to build good and never, ever face evil. That is not good for you. That is not spiritually good for you. You need to learn how to fight evil. When you learn how to fight evil, when you learn to stand up and speak against not the person, but the ideas that people are spouting that are wrong ideas, you need to learn how to fight that. And it's hard. You're gonna be exhausted at the end of that day, no matter what. But that's okay. It's good for you. But you need to have a balance, okay? So that's all that to say this. We need to fight evil and we need to build good. What does that mean? What does fighting evil look like? It means, first and foremost, pray like prayer can turn the tide. Pray like prayer can turn the tide. If you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that the only thing that was going to make a lasting difference in this country to change all the things that I was talking about, that it was prayer that would do that, would you pray? That's my question. Would you stop for 2 minutes every day and pray so that it could change? This is how the scriptures, this is how the apostles invite us into this battle. All of us, no matter what you do otherwise, all of us can do this. It doesn't cost you anything but time, and it engages you in a spiritual battle. It covers you with spiritual armor, and it makes a difference. Would you pray? Would you fight evil by praying about this stuff? This is part one for it, okay? Pray. Now you might say, well, I want to do more than pray. Good. Good, because praying is going to get you ready for more too. We fight evil by praying. We fight evil by working for policy change. Now, most of you probably don't know the first thing about how policy gets changed in government and all of this, and I get that. But it's working for policy change and supporting and encouraging those who do. Please don't think that someone who has been elected and who's over maybe in Denver fighting for that which is right doesn't have bad days and doesn't get battle weary. You know they do. It's amazing to me how sometimes we get just great men and women over in the State House and they don't last long. And the reason is because they're just like you and me. How long would you last in that kind of, I don't know what, I'm just going to leave it there. You fill in the blank. It's tough. They need encouragement. They need your encouragement. Send them a letter. Tell them you're praying for them. Tell them you appreciate the hard work that they're doing. It will make a difference in their life. Work for policy change and support and encourage those who do. Engage in education campaigns. Now, an education campaign might just be you sitting and talking to a neighbor about reality here. And to do that, you need to learn some things, and to do that, you need to get educated. So engage in education campaigns. Learn all you can and share what you've learned. It's as easy as that. Learn all you can, share what you've learned. Going to war against ignorance is one of the most important things that we can do as Christians in this nation. And it always starts with you. Go to war against ignorance in you. Start there. And support organizations who are fighting these battles, like them before us. And build good. Build good means invest in the lives of kids. There's almost, this is such a great thing you do. Invest in the lives of kids. Now, what I'm not just saying, like we're always asking for people to get involved in, helping with children's church and breakout and youth group and the things that we do. Great. And that is a great place to start. I'm not devaluing that in any way at all. But there are so many opportunities. Friends, get involved. Coach. If you know how to play a sport, coach. If you don't know how to play a sport that well, coach little kids. They don't either. They stink. Have you ever watched them? I guarantee you're better than they are. You'll help them. But here, coach with this in mind. Coach with this idea that you want these kids to see Jesus coaching their little league team. Jesus in you. Love these kids. Pour into these kids. Volunteer in the classroom. We have lots of teachers. We have quite a few teachers in this school. And in this church, which I think means something to me. To me, it is part of the fingerprint of God on Delta Christian Church. If you're wondering what you could do to help, ask them. Ask them. If you go up to them and you say, I got 2 hours a week, what could I do to help you or Garnet Mesa, or middle school, or the high school? What is it? What could I do? I didn't ask any of them beforehand. Am I right? Would you have something to say? Find out. Get involved. Invest. Get involved in organizations. We have this idea for some reason. I'm so sorry. I'm closing this up. I promise. We have this idea that in the church in America, for some reason, I wish we could just jettison this, but that if we're going to be a part of something, out in the community and do something, then it has to somehow be organized. It has to somehow live on the inside here at the church, So we're gonna start this club, we're gonna start this thing, or whatever. But the truth is, there are all kinds of organizations that are already here. There's organizations called Partners. There's the Boys and Girls Club. There's Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and all of this. And I'm telling you, if we just decided to be Christians in those places, it would make a huge impact. We're working right now with a group of people to kind of increase and bolster the Fellowship of Christian Athletes ministry that's happening in Delta County. It's been pretty weak for a while, and so there's a bunch of people coming together to try to put together a board and get churches involved in this. I had the privilege of hosting a luncheon just a couple of weeks ago, and a bunch of people showed up to it, all excited about it, and we're gonna work on doing that. Here's the thing: what we need is godly people to go and be a part of that and make a difference in the lives of young people. This is how we fight against this. This is how we build good. So get involved not all, you don't have to do everything. Get involved in something. Or if it comes to this, get behind someone who does. It's amazing to have a place to serve out there. What's even more amazing is to have a team of people behind you helping you to do the service that you're doing. Praying for you, sharing with you, sending cookies with you, or whatever, when you go. All right, I think you get the idea. When it comes to ending evil in our world, good intentions and well wishes don't amount to much at all. We all want to see right in our culture. But actually making a difference is the only thing that actually makes a difference. I feel like I should write that down. Put it on a t-shirt. Making it, it's so obvious, but really, making a difference is the only thing that actually makes a difference. You don't have to be the whole solution to the whole problem. As a matter of fact, you can't be the whole solution to the whole problem. You were never meant to be. Jesus is, and he always will be, and he meant for you. He chooses you to partner with him, and he wants to work in this world and change this world through you. You and I, working together, have the power to make a difference, to change the world, one kid at a time. And friends, that's enough because across the world, there's a lot of us. There's a lot of us. And we're getting together with the power of Jesus working in our life to make a difference in the life of one is going to eventually make a difference in the life of every one. But if we don't start somewhere, we'll never go anywhere. It might not seem like much, but I guarantee you it will mean the world to the one you reach.